Hey guys, welcome to the second PC here in Southern California. We've got 56 Masters and we're just going to jump right into it. We've got Mike versus Richard on your guys' screen. So on the left side, you've got Richard with that Galarian Darmanitan. You've got Dragapult, Drampa, Oranguru, Torkoal, and Maractus. And on the right, you've got Mike with Durant, Milotic, Conkeldurr, Togekiss, Whimsicott, and Chandelure, a very familiar team for any of you who probably watched Dallas Regionals. So I'm obviously very excited for anybody who knows how much I love Milotic and Chandelure. I bribed everyone at the PC today and I told them if they brought either one of those two Pokemon, I would give them a cookie. Of course, also giving away cookies for free because that's a lot of cookies. But also kind of excited to see that Darmanitan because of the fact that it's a kind of interesting Pokemon. Guerrilla Tactics is essentially a free choice band, and you can attach another item to it on top of that. Dragapult, a contender that we've seen just since the beginning of the Switch of the season. And Torkoal, kind of an interesting choice. We've seen it paired sometimes with things like Vileplume to kind of make use of the After You and the Chlorophyll. And then you've also seen in Trick Room teams, of course, a mode that you can also see here with that Oranguru. Maractus is a mystery to me because, you know, it's not one of those Pokemon I've ever looked at and thought, yes, I can make this competitive. I think it actually has Water Absorb, possibly. But Drampa also has Cloud9, Berserk, so Berserk raising its attack when it gets hit, and then Cloud9 nullifying effects of weather, so not exactly the best for Torkoal to pair up with in case that's the ability it has. But we'll see exactly how this is going to go down. My favorite part. Oh, I love trainer cards like this. This is great. Put effort into your trainer cards, guys. It's what makes this game fun. But hope you guys are having a good weekend. Happy first day of February. And we are going to start out with Whimsicott and Durant, a kind of scary combination just in general when you consider the fact that Durant has Hustle and then you've got Whimsicott with the ability Step Tail and Immunity, but we also now have that Torkoal and the Oranguru on Richard's side, and the Indestructibility on Oranguru after you set up Trick Room is also kind of something to look out for. So I think right here, if you're Mike, you're going to have to consider how are you going to get rid of that Oranguru before it sets up Trick Room, because Torkoal is scary when it has something like Eruption, and against something like your Grass type Whimsicott and your Steel and Bug type Durant, none of those are going to like a full powered Eruption in the sun. So you kind of have to choose, do you want to stop the Trick Room, do you want to stop the Torkoal? Because if Oranguru manages to set up something like that Trick Room, then you're going to have Pokemon in the back that can come in and utilize that very well, whereas Torkoal right now is probably going to go for something like a Protect to make sure it doesn't get knocked out, but Whimsicott's actually going to get switched out on this turn. Mike is bringing in a Conkeldurr instead. Conkeldurr, known for having something like a Flame Orb to boost the Guts ability, and Mike actually going for that Dynamax on this first turn. We've seen Durant go for Dynamaxes multiple times in other tournaments, and I'm sure most of you have seen it on the ladder as well. Hustle raising the attack stat of Durant, making it a really scary Pokemon with things like Max Steel Spike and a boosted attack stat. The accuracy lowering is a little bit of the gamut that you have to take here, but Torkoal going for Protect if it is targeted down by a Max move. That Protect won't work as much for it, and we see here a Max Quake from that Durant going into that Protected Torkoal, so doing some okay damage here. The Protect does help, but doesn't stop full damage from completely here, as Oranguru is going to be able to set up that Trick Room on this turn if it so chooses, as the special defense raises on both Conkeldurr and Durant because of that Max Quake. And there we are, that being set up right now, so Mike is definitely going to be on a timer, going to have to watch out for that Torkoal. Even though it took a little bit of damage, Eruption is still going to be doing a lot of damage here, especially that it's in the sun. Conkeldurr might be a little bit of a threat now that it's been burned thanks to that Flame Orb, which for anybody who's trying to get it, I've heard horrible things of how long it takes to get it from Ball Guy after you become champion. But Durant actually going to be switched out this turn, so Mike choosing to end his Dynamax turns early, as he actually brings back in that Whimsicott, so it might be a sacrifice of a Pokemon here. It's not exactly conducive to a strategy because of the fact that it is, it's going to get knocked out here, but it's actually Heat Wave instead of Eruption that we see from that Torkoal. So Whimsicott goes down immediately. Here's Conkeldurr, goes for Drain Punch, is going to go into that Torkoal, does recover some of the health that it just lost thanks to that attack. Does a little bit more damage as well because of the Guts ability. So Conkeldurr not completely back up to health, but Instruct from Oranguru is going to make sure Torkoal goes for that move one more time. Is going to go for Heat Wave again. Obviously can't burn Conkeldurr because it's already burned, but is enough to pick up the knockout here thanks to a critical hit, helping that. It is also single target in the sun, so there's also that to consider. So Mike is now down 2 Pokemon, and we're gonna see what his last Pokemon is besides that Durant. He has also used his Dynamax turns already, so it is gonna be Togekiss and Durant here versus that Torkoal and then Oranguru and whatever else Richard has in the back. But kind of making the use of his Trick Room turns, Richard's putting a lot of pressure on Mike. He was forced to kind of end his Dynamax turns early because he wanted to save that Durant for later, but Conkeldurr wasn't really able to have as much staying power, I think, as Mike would have liked. That critical hit really hurt him there. But Durant going for first impression is going to be able to, yep, it picks up that knockout on Torkoal. An interesting move choice on a Durant, especially. Oranguru using Instruct, but there is nothing to instruct there as that Torkoal did just faint. But Oranguru is about to go to sleep in that next turn unless Richard decides to do something about it. Togekiss is using Yawn. A very sort of common move now, I would like to say, on Togekiss, as more people have been using it. But Drampa hits the field here in place of Torkoal. No Cloud9 abilities, so is going to be Berserk instead. Again, Cloud9 would have been an interesting choice given the fact that Torkoal is a Pokemon that has a weather setting ability. So Drampa having Berserk means that it'll raise its attack for later on once it starts landing. I think once it starts getting hit by other Pokemon, it will raise its attack stat. So one of those Pokemon, if you can't take out in one shot, you're going to have to be really careful to make sure it doesn't run over your team. I think seeing multiple dragons on one team has also been a really kind of cool choice because we have things like Togekiss, who are fairies, being more prominent now right here. But Hyper Voice is going to be the move choice here, is going to hit both Pokemon, as it is a spread move. Doesn't actually knock out both Pokemon, but an Instruct here from Oranguru might be enough to pick up that knockout, especially on that Durant, unless one of these Pokemon avoid, and none of them do, so Durant will go down that sort of additional damage from Life Orb, really hurting it now, but Togekiss is able to hold on. We are going to see it use Dazzling Gleam. Will be super effective damage here onto the Drampa, but not even close to being able to pick up a knockout. And there's that Berserk ability, is going to raise that special attack now for that Drampa. Oranguru does go to sleep here, so it won't be able to Instruct or set up Trick Room for later. But Drampa is the slowest Pokemon on the field, so it will be able to attack before Togekiss is able to move, unless Mike decides to protect this turn and have that Trick Room run out. But that will allow Richard to really just kind of switch out that Oranguru for another Pokemon in here that could take out that Togekiss. It's not really something that matters much. Mike does choose to forfeit here because Richard also still had that Dynamax ability available to him. So going into game 2, I think if you're Mike, you're going to have to start looking at how do you stop something like Trick Room from being set up. And for Richard, how do you stop someone from stopping you from setting up Trick Room, right? You've got Torkoal and Oranguru, who are traditionally have been just a really good pair. It's not even just from Sword and Shield. We've seen Torkoal be paired up before with other Pokemon, that could help utilize Trick Room to its best ability. And Oranguru, having been introduced in the previous generation with something like Instruct, has just been a phenomenal Pokemon to use because it can just have your partner Pokemon go for the same attack twice. And when you have Oranguru next to another Pokemon, they're going to be the slowest Pokemon on the field once you set up Trick Room. And Oranguru, unless you double down into it, is a little bit tougher to get rid of in one turn. And at that point, you have to sort of play the game of, do I just do I stop the Trick Room now, or do I stop the Pokemon that's going to do the most damage while it's in Trick Room? And when you look at like Mike's team, again, I'm 98% sure that's Big G's team from Dallas when he came in second place. It's not a team that really functions well in a slow mode, right? You have something like Whimsicott, which can set up the Tailwind, and it's a hit hard and hit fast type of team. You've got things like the Milotic to kind of stop things that would get rid of the Durant in terms of fire type moves, and I think that might be something we'll see from Mike. I kind of maybe switching out the Whimsicott and bringing in something like the Milotic to kind of help support the Durant. We did manage to see it use one move like that Max Quake to raise its special defense, and it also did some super effective damage to Torkoal behind the Protect. But when you're looking at a team that is very hard Trick Room, the decisions you have to make on your own end of the field are how do you either stop Trick Room or how do you stop the Trick Room attacker from doing too much damage. We saw Conkeldurr able to use Drain Punch. Again, didn't do too much damage though against that Torkoal. It took a lot of resources to be able to knock out that one Pokemon. And then Trample was able to come in and also attack with another spread move like Hyper Voice. And again, when you're trying to knock out something like Drampo that has Berserk and will raise its special attack every time you hit it, you have to decide how much resources you're going to be willing to devote to knock it out, especially because every time you try to hit it and you don't knock it out, you're giving it more firepower against your team for the next turn. Togekiss and most fairy types are usually really good against things like Drampo or Dragapult, like dragon type Pokemon, but in this case, Togekiss doesn't seem to have quite enough attacking power to be able to knock out Drampo on its own, which might be a different story if Togekiss was carrying something like a weakness policy, which it very well could be because Durant has the Life Orb. Togekiss could be running the weakness policy just because that is one of its more common items in this metagame right now. Whimsicott, we know, isn't holding a Focus Sash because it did faint from one hit from that Heat Wave. And I think, honestly, if you're Richie, there's nothing wrong with going with whatever 4 Pokemon you brought. That last Pokemon is unknown to all of us except for him. He had that Oranguru, the Torkoal, and then the Drampa in the back, and was never really forced to show his 4th Pokemon. And I think the onus here is on Mike to figure out how he's going to recover from this and force a Game 3. And we'll see if his strategy changes at all as we go into this game, too. Oh, I should update my trainer card. I haven't touched it in a while, and I need to change my decorations on it. But I like the fairy type outfit. It's really cute. So we are actually going to have Togekiss and Durant, so a little bit of a change here. Instead of Whimsicott, we're switching out for another fairy type Pokemon here. Togekiss we saw from that game 1, but Torkoal and Maractus. So Maractus is also a bit of a change. It is not that Oranguru, but Torkoal is bringing in that drought. And am I going to suddenly find out that Maractus has Chlorophyll? Because I genuinely don't actually know what its abilities are. I'm 90% sure one of them is Water Absorb. I'm looking at Miguel for help, and I don't think he actually knows either. Yep. So I'm sure someone's going to tell me at some point later today on Twitter what Maractus's abilities are. Oh, is it Storm Drain? I thought it had something to do with water. I thought it was Water Absorb. Storm Drain is... Oh, okay. Storm Drain. And at least it's not a Gastrodon, and I don't have to listen to it, so that's fine. But Durant going for that... Oh, okay, it is Chlorophyll. That was the one I was looking for. That was Jeremy in the background, if you guys could hear that. But Durant going for that Dynamax here as Maractus goes for Spiky Shield. Wow, it's the first time I've seen it on a Pokemon that's not Smeargle. As Durant goes for Max Rockfall. There was no Protect, I think, on that Torkoal. Yeah, that is absolutely no Protect as Torkoal gets demolished there and is knocked out. You bring up that Sandstorm too, and you actually rewrite that that drought effect from earlier on. So if that Maractus has Chlorophyll, it's not gonna happen here right now, but Maractus protected itself and is not gonna take any damage from that Air Slash, but will take residual damage from that Sandstorm. So that was Mike's way of saying, hey, that Torkoal was a pain in the butt last game, and I'm gonna get rid of it right now. And now if you're Richard, you have to figure out how you're going to manage this. This Durant is kind of scary. You've raised your special Mike has raised his special defense with it. Togekiss is also a powerhouse of a Pokemon that, if you have played any Pokemon at all, you've probably seen. And now you've got mostly slow Pokemon here going against Pokemon that will have a little bit of speed advantage, except you've got that Dragapult, and Dragapult is not a slow Pokemon. And it actually might be the Pokemon here that Richard chooses to Dynamax. You've got things like Max Phantasm, you've got maybe something like Max Wormworm to go against the Pokemon, against Mike's Pokemon here to lower their stats. However, you have to watch out for that Togekiss because Dazzling Gleam will do a lot of damage to your Dragapult, and it's gonna put you even more on timer than Dynamaxing usually does. Maractus, if it did have Chlorophyll, is actually kind of useless in that regard in terms of speed because there is no more sun here. We are in a sandstorm, and there's Richard going for that Dynamax on the second turn, so he'll have an extra turn of Dynamax if that Pokemon can stay around past Durant. And it is going to be that Dragapult we see here that is going to go for that Dynamax, which, not surprising, it is one of the more common, if not the most common Pokemon to see besides the things like Rhyperior or on the other side of the field, Durant now, as Togekiss goes for the Follow Me. He's going to redirect all the attacks to itself as long as they are not spread moves, so Max moves won't be working there in that case, as Max Phantasm is going to go into that Togekiss. Does considerable amount of damage, but it's not that Durant, which means that Durant's attack is still, that Durant's defense is still going to be fine. Nope, my bad. But Max Steel Spike is going to negate what Max Phantasm just did as it goes into that Dragapult. Does insane amounts of damage. That Life Orb and the Hustle ability really helping it out here. And now both Togekiss and Durant are back at neutral defense thanks to that Max Steel Spike secondary ability. Weather Ball from Maractus. So Weather Ball is actually really dependent on the type of weather, as its name implies, that is right here on the field. And that Sandstorm means that Togekiss takes super effective damage from that Weather Ball ability. The last time I saw someone use Weather Ball was with Victory Bell back in like Sun series. So Dragapult and Maractus do take a little bit of residual Sandstorm damage. So this Dragapult is slowly being chipped away here as Mike is able to bring in Milotic. I love Milotic so much, guys. And Milotic is actually in an interesting spot here. It does carry Muddy Water from as far as I can tell for the most part, but Muddy Water in this case, you're going to take a gamble on if that Maractus is going to be Storm Drain or not. So, you are going to have to watch out for that. If you're Mike, I don't know if that's something you really want to gamble here and give Maractus that chance to raise a special attack. But Max Lightning from Dragapult is going to go into Milotic, do super effective damage, but not quite enough to pick up the knockout on it. On here. It is going to bring up electric terrain for everyone, which means if you are using an electric type move on the field, it'll do super active damage. Maractus is going to get knocked out by that Max Flutterby from that Durant, and of course it's going to be super active damage here as it lowers the special attack of both. Just now that Dragapult, as it is the last Pokemon left on the field thus far. Milotic going for the Ice Beam and is going to pick up that last bit of HP on Dragapult and get the knockout here, leaving Richard to his last Pokemon. It's going to be a little bit of a tough one for him as the tables have turned here, and Mike is now the one who's kind of in the driver's seat, and that is going to be actually a leftovers Milotic, so going to recover any HP that it might have lost from that Sandstorm chip. And now if you're Richard, you're probably thinking, what are you going to do for Game 3? Because it's going to be very difficult with just Oranguru, which is a very supportive Pokemon, to kind of take down Milotic, Durant, and whatever the last Pokemon Mike has in the back. And honestly, yeah, I think you should be thinking about Game 3 right now if you're Richard. Going for something like Torkoal and Oranguru probably doesn't hurt too much. You have to really think about what are you going to do when you lose your Torkoal, because the Torkoal was kind of the linchpin in Game 1, and if you don't have that, if you don't have access to that, or if your Maractus wasn't able to really do anything in this game, it hid behind a Protect and it tried attacking and it didn't really work out to its benefit at all. And now you're just kind of playing like a stall game here, right? You got Oranguru who can do psychic damage, but Milotic can just recover and then do damage later. You can try to set up Trick Room if you'd like with Oranguru, but it's not going to really do much at this point. And I mean, Mike has in some ways all the time in the world, but we are just going to see a forfeit here from Richard this time. And Game 3 is going to be pretty interesting because now you have to consider, do I go back to my Game 1 strategy if you're Richard? And then for Game 2, what does it really look like for Mike? Because his strategy in Game 2 actually worked to his benefit. He had both enough pressure with Togekiss and Durant to be able to do enough damage to that Torkoal because it did Hyper Protect, and to kind of just ignore the Maractus for a little bit, right? You can target it down with Air Slash, but I was at least able to draw attacks away from Durant, so was able to do its own thing for later on. And I think when you kind of look at that, like when you look at the game in terms of that way, then it's a matter of which strategy works for you the best, and then how do you use your other remaining Pokemon to make sure your strategy happens, right? If you're Richard, I honestly just think that you have to go for the Trick Room right away, because if you don't set up your Trick Room, then your Pokemon are just sitting ducks there. They can't really do anything until they have advantage in speed. They're just taking damage unnecessarily at that point. And that Torkoal was lost almost immediately in Game 2, and it just wasn't able to do anything. We saw it just generate so much power in Game 1, and then in the second game, it just went down under a pile of literal rocks. Whereas Mike, I think he had learned from Game 1 that, hey, maybe Whimsicott wasn't the best thing to bring here, because at that point, I don't have anything to stop Trick Room, unless he has something like Taunt on Whimsicott, because Taunt could just stop Oranguru from setting up Trick Room. It'll stop the Instruct, and it'll just leave that Oranguru as a Pokemon that is being forced to switch out and then switch back in later, in which case Mike will be able to at least deal enough damage to the other Pokemon or to whatever switches in at that point. So, oh no, that's fine, okay. Oh, I meant for other players. But, okay. Yeah. I totally lost my train of thought. I hope I see Chandelure. That's the only thought I have whenever I see teams with Chandelure at this point. Or maybe if you switch out the Maractus for something else. I think if you're going to go for... I think you have to commit to one strategy. If you're Richard, you either commit to the Trick Room or you commit to the Chlorophyll with Maractus. I don't think you can divide your team the way that he had kind of tried in that second game. So... it's hard to run, I think, 2 different modes unless you have like your entire team dedicated for that strategy just for that game. We're actually going to see, yes, we get to see Chandelure. I guessed right. Oh, I love this. Okay, so Durant and Chandelure are going to be on the field. I'm so excited. This is great. 2 games in a row with like 2 Pokemon that I love. This is the best. And then Torkoal and Maractus. So from game 2, we are going to see if Richard has decided to commit to a specific strategy here. We are going to guess that Maractus is going to be Chlorophyll because Torkoal is paired up with it, with that drought ability, and Maractus, I guess, is the new Violet Bloom at this point. Always love to see some Gen 5 love here, which is what we're seeing on the field, besides that Torkoal. But Durant is actually going to go away for now for another Gen 5 Pokemon here. We've got that Conkeldurr back on the field. We did see that it had that Flame Orb from earlier on. Maractus decided to go for After You. Goes for the Eruption. Is going to activate Chandelure's Flash Fire. I'm not sure if Richard was aware that that's Chandelure's ability, but is going to power up that move for Chandelure. Does an insane amount of damage to Conkeldurr. But Chandelure returns fire with its own Heat Wave, is able to pick up the knockout on Maractus with that super effective damage, but also does a lot of damage to Torkoal because of the fact Torkoal taking a powered up Heat Wave in the sun, despite the fact that it's a fire type Pokemon, adds a little bit of a tough sell. Oranguru does hit the field here, but this Torkoal, unless it goes for Protect right now and tries not to get hit, it's kind of on its last legs, and Chandelure was able to be like, hey, that's fine, I'll take the Eruption from that Torkoal and I'll power up my own moves. And this is what we'll see happen here. I think Oranguru might be able to try to save it, but Conkeldurr could also just deal the last bit of damage that you need towards that Torkoal. I don't think you'll see something like the Dynamax here, especially because Conkeldurr is on its last bit of legs as well. But Torkoal does protect itself this turn as Chandelure goes for the Heat Wave. If it misses, this could be big for Richard. No, but does connect with that Oranguru. Again, it is boosted by both the Sun and by that Flash Fire from earlier. But Conkeldurr doubling down into that Oranguru goes for the Drain Punch and is able to pick up just that little bit of HP that it needed to knock out that Oranguru, stopping that Trick Room in its tracks and giving Conkeldurr back some little bit of HP here. So it is around for a couple more turns. Torkoal had burned through 1 Protect, is going to be next to whatever Pokemon is in the back now for Richard against this Chandelure and Conkeldurr. That Eruption just really helped out that Chandelure, able to let it like sweep through this other team. As Drampa is the last Pokemon, Drampa and Torkoal are going to be the slowest Pokemon on the field. We did see them go first in the Trick Room mode in Game 1. Chandelure really just has to click Heat Wave and sort of just knock out both of these, knock out the Torkoal especially. And maybe not the Drampa, but even that special attack boost, it's not going to be able to hold on for very long. We're going to see Mike go for that Dynamax just to ensure that he does manage to knock out his opponent. Oh my gosh, this is my first time seeing Dynamax Chandelure, and I'm so happy. I am in such a happy place right now. It is so cute. This is the best day ever, guys. But Drampa going for the Protect on this turn is going to try to stop as much damage as possible from being thrown into it. Chandelure going actually for Max Phantasm is going to go into that Torkoal and knock it out. Max Phantasm is going to lower the just regular defense of both of just Drampa now, as it is the lone Pokemon on Richard's side of the field. Conkeldurr going for the Drain Punch, but Drampa went for that Protect, so not going to be able to do anything. However, will take a little bit of extra damage from that Flame Orb burn. Drampa, though, it's going to have a hard time here, as Hyper Voice is actually not going to be able to touch that Chandelure because of that grass normal typing. I am clearly very tired. I meant to say ghost typing. They both started with a G. I promise I am awake, guys. It's been a very long day for me already. That is my bad. But Drampa is going to go for that Dynamax. Maybe going to try to get just a little bit more damage output with those max moves at its disposal now. And there's that Chandelier going for the max flare, still boosted by the sun here, is gonna do a lot of damage to that Trampa, gets it down to just a little bit over half HP as Conkeldor goes into that Drain Punch as well, is gonna pick up those final bits of HP, recover its health, and knock out the last Pokemon on Richard's side of the field, giving Mike the third game and the first round. So, I mean, that was kind of fun. I enjoyed seeing Chandelier get that Flash Fire boost, so that was pretty cool. We've got a couple more games going on around back here, and I mean, as soon as they're done and we get all those results in, we'll be able to bring you guys round 2. So don't go anywhere. You won't see my face unless I post it on Twitter somewhere, but see you guys in round 2.